I'm always a big fan of buying no matter what the market is like, because if you are buying for cash flow, then you will not lose. If you look up the history of rent prices over time, at the most, usually rent prices just stabilize.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Sticks and Stones podcast. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Stone Fredrickson. I am your host, and on this show, I explore the different minds of very successful content creators, entrepreneurs, and investors to try to provide you with as much valuable information so that you can become successful. Today, I'm very excited to sit down and talk with Antonio, or also known as Invest Starters, on every social media platform, including TikTok, of which he has over 600,000 followers. Incredible what he has done on that platform. We chop it up a little bit about that, his strategy when starting out, and his strategy currently. I really wanted to focus on investing into real estate and his knowledge about that, because he helps beginner real estate investors buy their first real estate property and shows them, what a good location is to invest into, how to analyze a deal for cash flow, and how to feel comfortable investing into a real estate property and not getting caught by that analysis paralysis state. Very knowledgeable. He goes through the exact process and everything you need to know in terms of buying your first real estate property. He talks about the current state of the real estate market, what he thinks. We chop it up about a ton of things, including content, but very, very excited to sit down and talk with him. There's a ton of value in this podcast, so super excited for you guys to listen and watch. Be sure to check out all of his socials linked in the description. Check out his real estate free guide in the description as well. And if you are watching the podcast on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, comment any questions that you have down in the comment section below. I read and respond to all of those. Like the video, and whatever platform that you're listening to the podcast on, be sure to rate it 5 stars if you wouldn't mind. Thank you guys so much. Hope you enjoy, and let's get into it. So Antonio, super excited for this podcast. I mean, I'm looking into getting into real estate a little bit more this year, maybe next year. And you're really, big into, obviously on TikTok, but big into helping people get their first property. So I think this will be really beneficial for not only myself, but for a lot of people that are listening and watching. But before we get into that, and maybe a little bit more about your TikTok success, I first just want to go over a little bit more about your story and who you are and what got you here.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm here because we met up, but how I ended up on TikTok and teaching this stuff was I was living in New York City when I was 24 to 26 and 27 too. But I had always wanted to invest in my first rental property, but it always seemed like this thing that was out of reach. Like either I didn't have enough money, or like, I'm young. How am I supposed to buy a house, right? Isn't that what old people do? Like, no one my age was buying a house. So I had all these fears and these worries. I was so afraid of making a mistake that it wasn't until I kind of was forced into this position to make a decision about my renting or owning in the future that I said to myself, I was like, I got to be the owner. I can't be the renter. And from that scenario, I forced myself. I pulled out all the books. I spent 4 years reading books and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos about real estate investing. And I was like, this has got to be simpler. Like, there's got to be a step-by-step process or formula. So I took my software engineering brain, because I used to be a software engineer, and I basically applied it to, okay, how can I make this into a process or a formula? And then I came up with my formula on how I did it, and that made me feel confident, because I was like, all right, I'm basing most of my decisions off of data, off of numbers, and not off of what seemed like the most of the space was based off of, which was like hearsay, or like what this person said or what this person said. And so while I'm going through those issues, I realized I was like, I can't be the only one to face this problem. So I just started talking about it online. And I already had a YouTube channel where I was talking about self-improvement stuff because I cared about it. But this finally started catching on because I would notice that there's other people that had this exact same problem. And every time I told them what my process was, they were like, oh, that feels clear. That makes me feel like I know what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, so there's something here. And I kept just going. I just kept posting. And I started on YouTube, and then I switched over to TikTok in December 2020. And yeah, now we're here.
The rest is history. Yeah. I mean, what you've done on TikTok is really remarkable. I mean, over 600,000 followers, and you've been posting consistently. I think you started like end of 2020, so that was a while ago, and you're still at it. I'm curious, like, what was like the goal in the beginning? Like, what was the strategy, and kind of how does it compare to the goals and strategies now?
Well, the beginning was 2017 when I posted my first YouTube video. So I know most people didn't see the 2017 to 2020 Antonio, but the idea at that point in time was just post a video because people need to hear about this stuff, regardless of whether or not it's viral or whatnot. Like, I was so passionate about self-improvement and getting people to take action that I needed to talk about it, because I knew that if I helped one person, I could change an entire family, right? If that one person then is motivational and takes action and builds wealth for their family, then hey, that entire family gets impacted, and their friends. And so I realized the power of the internet, seeing how other people had influences on me. So I knew that was like the strategy in the beginning. Now I'm definitely trying to be more strategic about it, other than just post the video. But in the beginning, it was solely that, just like wanting to talk about this thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough.
I could totally relate to that, because I mean, I started creating content because I was in e-commerce before I did any of this, and then got really big into investing, compound interest, building your wealth. And I was like, this is insane. If I could just, put $300 a month into an index fund for 30 years, I'll retire, like just simple things like that. And Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these other things were just super fascinating to me. And I was so obsessed with it to where I was like, other people got to know about it, and other teenagers just need to start taking more advantage of opportunities like this. And so I think, when a reason, and when you have that why, and it's more important than your image or kind of how other people think about you, I think that's a good way to get past those kind of insecurities. So that's really good. But I'm also curious, like, now, since you're, super busy with real estate and your business, how have you kind of integrated that and prioritized content in your life?
Yeah, it's an ever evolving process. Depending on when you talk to me, maybe I'm spending more time content, more time real estate. Right now, it's definitely more time content. I see content creation and building systems in your business as creative tasks, right? You really have to spend time thinking about the problem. How do I solve this thing? And content creation is the same way. It's like, okay, how do I come at this from a creative angle? How do I come at this and teach people in a different way? How do I make it engaging, entertaining? And so that takes a lot of your brain power. So I look at it as like, my mornings are really built of creative tasks, whether that's doing something business oriented, like a system thing, or content creation. And then the afternoons are more for when my creative energy's dried and I have nothing else left to give. I can then do, like, if I'm looking at properties, I can analyze those no problem, because that's a skill I built, and I don't have to spend focus time to get better at the skill. I'm already good at it, so I can just punch a bunch of numbers in the calculator, and then it's done, right? I don't have to really sit there and think creatively. That's how I kind of budget my days, two different tasks. I got it from deep work, which is like shallow work and deep work. And so deep work is anything that is creative or requires effort and energy.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, and, putting those big tasks and ones that require those, creative thinking in the morning or whenever you have the most willpower and, energy to get them done in the best of your ability. That's awesome. Let's dive into real estate now, because I've been waiting to really get into this. Obviously, like I said earlier, you're big into getting people to buy their first property. Kind of run me through the buying process of the first home. Maybe some things. Let's just talk. For me, because I think a lot of people are in the same boat as I am. Haven't gotten a property yet, looking for it. Don't know really what to do. What are some things I need to do? Maybe look out for. Keep in mind, and kind of, maybe just like the overview of the process of buying your first home.
Yeah. So if we're talking about home for rental property, because um, that's the lens at which I look at it as. The first step is picking your strategy. There's a lot of different ways you can go about real estate investing. There's Airbnb, there's rental arbitrage, there's long-term rentals, there's turnkey rentals, there's house hacking, there's wholesaling, there's wholetailing, there's all these, fix and flip. There's all these different strategies, and each one will help you accomplish a different goal. So if you're someone that doesn't have much money and has a lot of time, then wholesaling might be good for you because it's not something that requires a lot of money, but it requires a crap ton of time.
Right.
If you're someone who's good with their hands and understands what it takes to fix up a house, and you have some money and you want to make a lot of profit quickly, then I would go with flipping. If you're someone who's trying to build passive income and wealth, then I would pick one of the forms of buy and hold, which would be rental property or Airbnb, something like that. So once you've picked one, because when I was starting out, what I realized was that I kept bouncing back and forth between which strategy. One day I was like, I need to generate a lot of money quickly, so maybe I should flip. But I was like, but I don't know how to fix anything, so maybe I should do buy and hold because I know I want to be able to do that long term anyway. But then I would bounce back to fix and flip because I was like, but I need to generate a lot of money quickly, right?
Yeah.
So until I said, okay, I'm just going to pick this one and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, was I able to move on to the next step. The second step is picking a location. And this is more and more challenging by the day as the home prices keep going up. Where do you live right now?
Arizona.
Okay. And the home prices have skyrocketed, right, by you?
Yeah.
I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So as most of the country, right? Most people just assume that, okay, because I live in Arizona, I should invest there. And that's exactly what I assumed. I was like, I live in Manhattan. I guess I have to invest here. But looking at the home prices in Manhattan, there's no way I was going to be able to afford anything for the next 5 to 10 years. So instead of just assuming that you have to invest where you live, I highly recommend you invest in a city that is actually good for investing. And the way you would do that is you would look at the home price in the area and compare that to the annual rents that you can get from an average home. That's called price to rent ratio. You want to pick a city that has low price to rent ratio. If you do that, then what you're saying is I have a higher probability of finding a home that's actually going to be profitable on the market. If I go to Zillow right now and I look at a home in Akron, Ohio, I have a higher chance of finding a home that's profitable than doing the same thing in New York City or Arizona.
Got it.
But not only that, right? Because you don't want to invest in an area that's profitable, but is also the hood, right? Or, where a lot of bad things might happen. So, you want to look for areas with low crime, high population growth, low unemployment rates, low property taxes, and is in a landlord-friendly area. That's how I look at it. And combining all of those, you then pick one city based on the data points, right? Don't let me tell you that it's a good idea to invest in Akron, Ohio. Do the research and let the data tell you that it's a good idea to invest in Akron, Ohio, compared to wherever else you're looking at.
Got it.
So that's step 2.
Where do you? What tools do you use for that step? Maybe even just for looking at the houses. Is Zillow a good website, a tool to use, or is there different ones?
Yeah. There's a bunch of different ones. So citydata.com is what I use for crime and unemployment rate. I have a whole YouTube video outlining and TikTok outlining every single website if you want to do it yourself. The first step is to brainstorm the list of cities, right? You need to first come up with what cities will I even look at.
Right.
Then crime and unemployment are on city data. Then USA.com/rank has population growth. Then Zillow has median home prices for month to month for every single city around the U.S. Then I use Rentometer or a Rent Cafe to get the rent prices. Then I use Smart Assets rental property or their property tax calculator for property taxes, and then I use a map to determine the landlord friendliness. There's this online infographic that'll show you which states are more landlord friendly than the others.
Love it.
And the point of this process is that it's free, anyone can do it,
Right.
but also it's not necessarily about how accurate is each data point. It's more about, I use this example a lot. If I'm in Austin today, right, and I'm trying to lose weight, and I step on my scale and my weight says I'm 183, and then tomorrow I step on that scale and it says I'm 182, we can conclude that I lost weight, right?
All right.
But if I take that same weight of 183 in Austin on day one, and then I fly to New Jersey, and day two it says I'm 184 on a different scale, that doesn't mean that I gained weight. I'm on a different scale. I need to have consistent data points with the same scale.
Right.
So as long as you're using the same data sets for each thing, then you should be on the same scale, and then the data doesn't necessarily matter how accurate it is, because ultimately, yeah, sure, we could pay thousands of dollars for the most accurate information, but is anyone going to do that? Probably not.
Right. Okay. So, so what's step 3? Okay, you do the research. You got your strategy kind of planned down. You know, say it's a rental property. Say, for me, I'm kind of looking into house hacking. Getting 2 units, renting out 1 unit, and having that pay off the mortgage. We'll kind of get your take on that. But say you got your strategy. Say you've done the research. Now what?
Now you got to get pre-approved. You got to get funding, right? That's where the next step is okay. Once you know what city you're going to invest in, you have a good idea of what home prices you're aiming for. Now, if you didn't know what city, right, the home prices change drastically. So let's say you pick a city with home prices that are $200,000. If that's the case, then you need to go to a bank. Call them. You don't need to show up to a bank. And some of these you could even just apply online. You apply and you enter all your information and you say, I want to get pre-approved for a rental property up to $200K. If you're going to house hack, you say you're going to buy a primary residence. That's really just step 3. And some people might get stuck there because their credit score is not high enough, or maybe they don't have enough money saved. And that's totally okay. I had to spend about a year getting more job history because I had a gap between 2 jobs. And so the bank was like, I need to see 2 years consistent. So I waited 2 years. Now there's ways around that now that I've learned, but there may be blockers there, and that's okay. Once you apply, the bank will tell you why you didn't get pre-approved if you didn't. If you did, you're good to move on to the next step. If you didn't, then you need to focus on getting those things. Maybe it's savings, credit score, whatever. And then step 4 is simply looking at properties every single day and analyzing them. The formula to figure out if a rental property is a good deal is just taking the rent and subtracting all of the expenses every single month. And so if you do that, before I bought my first property, I had to analyze over 200. I made offers on 9 out of the 200, and out of the 9, I got 2 offers accepted and 1 failed, and I ended up getting the second one. But that took me looking at 200 properties and feeling confident about the numbers after doing it a bunch, right? So just like anything else, if you want to get better at the bench press, you got to keep benching, right? It's just that simple. And that might take you longer now that we're in a hotter market. More people are offering, more people want to buy houses. But in a buyer's market, and which, that might happen sometime soon, we don't know, that could be a lot quicker. Like maybe it only takes you 50 homes before you find one that's a good deal. But it takes time. It takes time to find one, that's for sure. Got
it. And then, in terms of like the expenses, is there anything that I or anyone else that's getting a first property should keep in mind? Maybe it's additional expenses, or maybe even just like the time, the liabilities, anything like that, to where to just keep in mind.
So with every property, I save, on top of your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, your property management, I save about 20% just in case if anything goes wrong, and that's usually split up between vacancy, meaning someone might not be living there and I have to cover the mortgage and costs, because that will happen. I save for repairs because that will happen. And I save for capital expenditures, which are like repairs, but they're classified differently for tax situations. So I put them differently. They're like the bigger things, like a roof or a driveway or something like that needs to get redone. And you want to profit on top of that 20%, 21 to be exact for me, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, because that's what will determine like make or break over the long term, right? You could be profitable on a property for 5 years straight because nothing went wrong. And then as soon as one sewer pipe bursts, right, you could lose the last 4 years of profit if you didn't save anything on top of that. And that's the problem that I see a lot right now is a lot of investors are buying and saying like, oh, this property cash flows, but they're only looking over the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance. And I'm like, that's not nearly as much of all the costs you should be budgeting for. Now, they're going to be able to buy a lot more properties because according to them, a lot more properties show up as profitable, right? Because they're not consuming a lot of expenses. But I'd rather say no to a potentially good deal and say yes to really good deals than to take a average deal and have a bunch of average deals and have them potentially all screw up at some point in time and then me losing all my money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that definitely makes sense. Do you so when you're saving this money, do you like, or even when you're buying all these properties, I mean, especially when you're getting the multiple, or do you do it like maybe under an LLC, or is there a specific way you do it? You know, do you have like a team, or is it just you?
Well, I have the definition of a team is a little bit different. I don't have employees working under me buying properties. In real estate, a team sometimes means like people that have functions that work with you, not necessarily for you. So yeah, technically I have a team, but I don't have any employees. I have real estate agent usually, maybe a wholesaler that I'm working with.
Got it.
I have inspectors. I have the bank of whoever I'm getting the loan from. I have contractors to help me know how much it's going to cost. And I have my partners on my property. So it's all like, there's no like employees in the end. It's just,
that makes sense.
Team members. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
How about
and I buy them under an LLC. I forgot to answer that one. Yeah, but
good.
My first one I did not. Yeah.
Got it. So, I mean, what do you think about house hacking? Because that's something I'm looking more into, and like I told you before this podcast, I mean, I don't know much about real estate. I've watched a couple Graham Stephan videos, but that's about it. So I'm kind of curious to get your take on that, and if so, maybe some advice you would give someone like me or anyone else that's looking to house hack.
I accidentally knocked out my wire. I missed.
All good. No, I was
after house hacking. Yeah,
all good. I was just I was wanting to get your take on house hacking and kind of maybe some advice you would give for someone like me, or even if it's like a good idea to do for your first house.
Yeah, I mean it can be a good idea. The only challenge with house hacking is that the benefit is that you get to buy a house for cheaper, right? The con is that because you're buying the house for cheaper, your mortgage is going to be higher. You also have PMI, and because of those two things, your chances of finding a good deal are lower than if someone was putting more money down. To give you an example, right? Let's say we're looking at a $100,000 house. On a $100,000 house, if you buy it with an FHA loan, your mortgage is going to be $96,500. If you bought that with 25% down, your mortgage is going to be $75,000. The mortgage on a $75,000 loan is lower than the mortgage on a $96,000 loan. So you need the rents to be higher in order for you to cover the cost. But it can save you years of having to save to buy a property because you're putting only 3 to 5% down instead of 20 to 25.
Yeah.
Because how much longer would it take you to save $3,500 versus $25,000, right? Like that time difference is huge.
For sure.
So a lot of times it's worth to take the extra cost.
For sure. For sure. What is your opinion on this market and especially with interest rates going up? Should someone like me, even be screwing around with a market like this or wait? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of buying no matter what the market is like, because if you are buying for cash flow, then you will not lose. If you look up the history of rent prices over time, at the most, usually rent prices just stabilize. In a recession, what happens is people lose jobs. If people lose jobs, they can't apply for a mortgage. So if they can't apply for a mortgage, then they can't buy a house. If they can't buy a house, what do? They rent. So renting actually goes up during a recession. If renting goes up during a recession, your demand is still there. So I wouldn't worry about the demand. The problem is when you buy a house based on the home value. If you buy a house today, let's say you buy a house in Arizona for $400,000 today, right? Is that a fair price for a house in where you're at?
Yep.
Okay. So if the house is $400,000 today, you buy it. But you ran the numbers, and you're making $200 a month in cash flow with your house hack, right? Okay. Let's say they decide to raise the interest rate to 16% tomorrow, and the market tanks. Like every house drops 50%, which I don't think has happened 50% in a lot of markets around the U.S. I don't know for a fact of what happened in 2008, but I'm pretty sure 50% it's probably more than what is more than likely would happen. So let's say now your house is worth $200,000, right? You're still making $200 a month. It doesn't matter what your house is worth.
Right.
Right? In 5 years from now, let's say it only goes up to $300. That's okay. You just can't tap the equity of the house. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only con. Like, you can't use the equity inside the house to get you more house. That's okay. You made a mistake, but you are making cash flow regardless. But here's the other side of the scenario. Let's say you wait to buy a house, and you don't. You wait 2 years, and the house is $400,000 today, and the market doesn't crash. Okay? And in 2 years from now, it's now $450,000. That same house. Right? Now you got to put down more money. Now your chances of that same property cash flowing is lower. And you missed out on 2 years of tax benefits on appreciation and cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So
there's no scenario in my mind, as long as you're buying for rental, then you lose. If you're going to fix and flip, that's a different story.
Right.
Because you're dependent on the home value.
Yeah.
But if you're buying for a rental, there's no loss. The other con is also Airbnb. If you're going to Airbnb, you might be a little bit wary because of because in a recession, people tend to spend less money on vacations. And if they do, that means vacation rentals will drop.
Right. Right. Okay. So just, piggybacking off the waiting and maybe the analysis paralysis state of, being really afraid because this is a huge investment. This is a lot of money. Kind of what is your piece of advice to kind of get out of that state and just, go ahead and take action on maybe, a product that you think is a good investment? You got to start putting yourself out there. That's going to be my biggest thing here, is that it's easy to be behind the computer and looking at Zillow and being like, yeah, I want to do this. I did that for so long. It's really different when you start calling a lender and getting pre-approved. It's different when you start speaking to a real estate agent and they're sending you properties, because now you're out here in the world saying, I want to do this thing. It's not just in my own head, right? It's one thing to tell me, right, on here, but it's another thing to tell the real estate agent whose now income is dependent on you buying a property. So they're going to make sure that you buy one. They're going to keep calling you. The lender's going to be like, hey, what's going on with that loan? Because they don't make money until you do. So
putting yourself out there and telling these people is going to be the biggest way to not be able to turn back because you went out there.
Yeah.
Now, if you call them and then you don't do anything, then they're going to think you're not a legitimate person. And then you're just hurting yourself long term. But if you call them and say, hey, I want to do this, and then them following up with you actually gets you to take action, then that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Kind of keeps you accountable because they're following up on you and making sure that you're staying up with keeping up with your word, especially if you're interested in buying or getting a loan or getting repairs, things like that for a contractor. Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, let's fast forward a couple years. Maybe you get some rental properties. I'm curious about tenants. What do you kind of like? How do you find them? What do you look out for? And kind of what's the process look like? For getting them to move in and try to stay for as long as possible.
I actually don't do any of that. I have property managers who do that. My goal is to be an asset manager, right? If I am spending time managing the properties, getting the tenants, then my time is being spent in other places. It would be like if I decided to respond to every single comment and every single DM instead of having someone else do it for me, right? That takes a lot of my time, and I can't think of the new concept that might make me go viral again rather than doing that. So my main focus is going to be buying properties. Now, so my number one tip would be get a really good property management company. If you're going to plan on doing it on your own, there is a book on managing rentals from Bigger Pockets that I'd probably recommend. I haven't read it, but I have heard other people say that it was good. But basically, you're looking for someone who has a job, who doesn't have any bad history, who has a decent credit score, which is a good showing that they'll actually pay back. There's three main factors of how to actually get the tenants, right? If you put yourself in the mind of a tenant, first is location, right? If you got a property in downtown New York City, right next to a gym, right next to a couple bars, right next to the subway station, right? That is a prime location. A lot of people want to live there. So you're going to get the best of the best. So location is something you could do before you buy. The second thing is, and I just want to highlight that location doesn't necessarily mean it has to be New York City. It could mean like just 1 mile away from a grocery store in a small town too, right? That's a good location in that town. Then it's the price. The price, right? Like, so I had one property where we tried to list it for $850. The property management company said, hey, we haven't gotten any bites. So we lowered it to $800. No one went. So we lowered it to $775. No one went. And so we got it at $750. There's a concept called fair market rent. It's what tenants are willing to pay for in that area for a property similar size of bedrooms and baths and square footage. You can't determine the fair market rent, but you can determine your price around the fair market rent. And so in that scenario, the fair market rent was $850. And my property, in my opinion, was nicer than some others. But that could just mean that there weren't that many people looking at that time and people were already in places, or that like other people had specials and they were trying to get people in. So I had to lower my price, right? Just like if you were offering a price for a coaching call, there's other people that are also offering prices for coaching calls, and you need to be competitive with them. You can't just be completely out of touch. And then the last thing is the value, right? How much, or what are you getting here, right? If your property has a pool and no other properties have a pool, that's going to be really enticing. If you can allow pets, other people will want that, right? What can you do? How does the property look on the inside? These are all levers you can change to make the property more enticing for someone to want to live there. If there's extra space in the house, that's more enticing for someone, right? You can use all these different things to find a way to market your property best to get people to come. Yeah.
Okay. And so, when you're looking at maybe, the project managers, what are you then looking for? How do you find them? And, in terms of like pricing or payment, kind of how does run me through that? How does that work?
Yeah, they typically charge somewhere between 8 and 12% of the monthly rent. They will. So if you charge $1,000, it's 80 to 120 bucks. They'll also typically charge a fee on top of whatever work gets done. So if someone's coming to do a $1,000 job, they'll probably charge a percentage on top of that fee.
Okay.
To oversee the contractor. And then if they place a new tenant, a lot of them will charge a fee for placing a new tenant. And that's usually 1 month's rent or 25% of month's rent, 1 month's rent, somewhere in that time frame. The way I find them is usually I am finding one person who I trust in that market first. And that usually is my real estate agent. If I find a really good investor-friendly agent, then the investor-friendly agent has property managers, has contractors, has everyone that I need. So if I find that one person I trust, then I'm willing to extend that trust to other people. That's one way you can find them. The other way is you simply just go on Google and you search property managers in Little Rock, Arkansas, or wherever you want to invest, and then you search and call the ones with the best reviews. I'd say at least 3, and speak to them on the phone. You'd be surprised how many don't call you back. The ones that call you back, obviously, are the ones that you want to talk to, and you ask them about their pricing, ask them about their experience, how many units they have. You can even ask them for investor referrals, and go with the one that you seem has the best price for the best value, and make sure you're not in a contract that locks you in for a year or anything. This way, if they suck after the first year, or after the first month, you can just get rid of them and find a new one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we hammered all the points in terms of real estate. I mean, that was a ton of value right there. And for those of you listening and watching, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube already, be sure to subscribe. Hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Rate it 5 stars because this is a ton of value. Let's kind of dive into your kind of your view on money, investing and saving. Obviously, you're heavy into real estate, but always love to kind of talk about money, normalize money. Kind of give me your take on money, your view on it, and kind of obtaining financial freedom.
It's funny which context you ask me about money. Like when it comes to coaching, I don't like money as much because I think there's a lot more of in my head, there's a lot more of a negative connotation around money when it comes to coaching because people are not necessarily getting something tangible at the end of it. I'm a very tangible person. You pay $5,000 for coaching this, and then at the end, you may or may not end up with something. So I'm very much a tangible person. I like products more. I like software more. I like, even though software is not tangible, you usually get something from the software delivered to you. Like Spotify, you get music.
Right.
And with real estate, I have no problem with money. I'm actually very good with money. But when it comes to my personal business and charging people one-on-one for coaching, I don't like that as much. I don't know why. That's just my view of money. Now, in terms of financial freedom, I do think that financial freedom is like a good goal, but I don't think it's the end. It's not like you're going to get financial freedom and then want to chill on the beach for forever. Like the people who end up going for financial freedom, for the most part, want to make a bigger impact on the world. And sure, financial freedom is great, but what is really powerful is once you have the money, what you do with that money to either amplify your goodness in the world or amplify your evil in the world. One of the two.
Yeah,
I'd like to think that I'm good, so hopefully I'm amplifying the good in the world.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point too, because it's like a lot of people think you obtain financial freedom and then you, like you said, go on a beach and chill out, but you see time and time again a lot of people that are can retire at any time. They still continue to work because they love what they're doing. They're still creating a huge positive impact on the world. I mean, even the richest people, wealthiest people in the world, they're still working and still getting after it. What's your goal with all this, getting all this money? Kind of what is like the big goal for Antonio? Like what is the main purpose, the main thing that you really want to do in the world?
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to think out 10, 15, 20 years that far. But right now, my immediate goal is to retire my dad, who is a contractor, and he has arthritis in his shoulder, hip, and knees. So it's very hard for him to work consistently. He's an immigrant from Italy. Same with my mom. And so they both came here, sacrificed a lot for me to be where I am. And so my immediate goal is to retire them with the rental properties. If I can do that, then I can worry about myself afterwards, because I got a long way to go. But I see it as that's like a kind of a mission type goal. For me, I'd love to have $1 million passive from real estate, mainly because I'm up there with the big dogs. Basically, that's the kind of way I see it. And if I could be up there, then I think I'm in a pretty good spot financially. But I like another mission goal of mine is to start a school long term of helping people learn about things like finances, education, or emotions, relationships, social interaction, stuff that school should be teaching, but is not. And, that's very far down the line. My platform right now is just the stepping stone to that at some point in time. But, that is the long-term goal, we could say.
That's awesome, man. Probably my last question here. What's one piece of advice that will always stick with you for the rest of your life? Now, don't think too hard on this. It could be anything, but yeah.
Yeah. It is a hard question, but I have to say, have you read Letting Go by David Hawkins?
I have not, but I've heard of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. The concept of just letting go. I'd say that most scenarios, if you're struggling with something, chances are you're holding on to some form of emotional regret or pain or anger or something, and that's preventing you to change. And until you accept it and let it go, will the scenario change? I used to be so angry at YouTube for not giving me views. I'd be like, I did everything right. I did the right thumbnails. And then until I worked on letting go that feeling of not getting the results, did it come to my head is that maybe I should start TikTok. Okay, so I started TikTok, and then all of a sudden all these results started coming in out of almost nowhere. And I was like, had I done this 2 years ago, I'd have 15 million followers on TikTok, for Christ's sake. But it was just, it wasn't until I accepted it and let it go. And that seems to pervade in a lot of different areas of my life that I don't think I'll ever forget that.
I think that's awesome, man. Especially, on the YouTube / TikTok side of it. I mean, I can even relate to that too, because I started on YouTube and I was, pissed off on the engagement. I was like, what the hell's going on? I'm providing value. I'm having somewhat of a, engaging hook, I think. Until one of my, brother's buddies came up to me and said, dude, you have amazing value, but you're on the wrong platform. You got to get on the other platform, TikTok. And so that's when I, started on that. And, the rest is history. But you have anything for me before we wrap up? Any questions?
No, I mean, I'm all good. This was fun.
Awesome.
To talk about real estate. I love talking about real estate. I could talk about it all day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested in getting into it. I'm really excited too. But that's all. That's what's.
When are you gonna get started? That's the real question.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, like I want to probably doing step 1, step 2, maybe even step 3 by the end of this year. And then we'll kind of see. I to be honest, I'm trying to stay in my parents' house for as long as I possibly can, save up as much as I can, take advantage of the low expenses, the cost of living, and then like I said earlier, house hack, and then for maybe for a year or two and move out and just build it out like that. Easier said than done, but it's super exciting to think about.
Yeah, if that's your long term vision, then do that. And staying at your parents' houses is the cheapest thing you could possibly do, which is good. Not cheap isn't bad. Cheap isn't good because you end up saving a lot of money that way.
Exactly. Well, that's gonna do it all for this episode of the Sticks and Stones podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, rate it 5 stars, whatever platform you're listening on. Follow the TikTok if you're not already, at Stone Fredrickson, at Coach Stone. Be sure to check out Antonio. All of his socials, all of his links are down in the description. And follow my Instagram, add me on LinkedIn, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.